Let me get an idea of the audience that I have here today. Just by a show of hands, who feels or who thinks that as far as humans in society that we are on a good path? Wow, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would probably have to agree with most of the people in the room that refuse to raise their hands. And that's one of my biggest concerns with everything that I do in the community, through my business, through my family, everything that I invest any kind of energy or inspiration or drive into, because I feel like it is my responsibility as a participant, as somebody who is part of society, to do whatever I possibly can to ensure that the next generation is better off when I'm gone. And so it started, I would say these concepts probably were instilled into me very young, very early, from my father, who was the founder of City of Roses Disposal and Recycling. He actually took a big chance in '96 and decided to open up a waste hauling company, and he was just hauling debris. Primarily got a lot of his work fostered by the Rebuilding Center. Maybe a lot of you know about it, maybe a lot of you don't, but it's a pretty big entity on North Mississippi, non-profit. And that's what kind of kept him going. He was also simultaneously working for the city of Portland, so he was working 2 full-time jobs. And anybody who's ever worked 2 full-time jobs or has worked around the clock knows what kind of drive and what kind of desire and what kind of work ethic that takes really to try to fulfill all those obligations. And so growing up seeing that, being a son of a garbage man, you know, I hated garbage. I didn't see any desire in it. I was like, what the hell would I want to do that for? That seems stupid. You know, I'm interested in girls and basketball. You know, I don't really, garbage is the last of my concerns. But it wasn't until probably my early 20s when I really started seeing and understanding and overstanding how the world really works. And you start becoming exposed to all the things that you were essentially kept in the dark from as a youth. And, you know, I went through a lot of different parts of my life where I was angry and upset and not knowing how to channel that anger. And for me, it was important for me to try to find a way to invest that into something that I could actually probably see some return on. And with that, it was for me trying to find a way to help my father grow his company, help build our family legacy, and ultimately help my father have an easier life, because his life was just consumed of work. And it was no different from the generation before him. His father died at an early age by working 3 jobs. And so I had to find a way to try to sustain my father, retain his wisdom, so not only could I extract that wisdom from him, but also pass that along to the next generation within my own son. And so a lot of things I learned from him growing up. I'll tell you a couple stories. And I never understood it, but I get it now, totally. Me and my sister, we would get popped in the back of our head if we were ever caught leaving our shower water running before we were in the shower, or if we had lights on and we weren't in the room, or if we had water running while we were brushing our teeth, instead of just turning it off, brush your teeth and turn it back on when you need it. And then obviously, most importantly, if you didn't, you know, you gotta finish your food, you don't waste food. And the other big one was garbage. Do not throw anything away. If he saw something in the garbage, he would pull it out and you would get a mouthful. So those were kind of the fundamental morals and values that I was instilled with at a very early age, which essentially has kind of enabled me to kind of adopt this concept that I find it more important and logical and just part of common sense that what's the point of wasting? It doesn't even make sense. We waste so much. We waste water, we waste environmental resources, we cut trees, we waste materials. Good thing this building is built and, you know, managed out of salvageable beams and wood and reused wood. We waste food, obviously. I mean, everybody, you go out, you get a huge plate of food. Nobody eats all that food. You know, we just waste nonstop. We waste, and most importantly, the biggest thing we waste is we waste human capital. We waste human potential. And that's primarily what I'm talking about is people in underserved, underrepresented communities. A lot of them just are felt hopeless, and in a lot of ways, they're stuck in their conditions and they don't even understand they even got in those situations, or most importantly, how to get out of those situations. And so for me as an entrepreneur, it felt like it was more my responsibility as a business owner to try to find a way to implement all of these concepts into how I was going to create significant next generational change just off the things and the values and the ethics that I was instilled with at a young age. And today we all talk about it with the buzzword called sustainability. But in a lot of communities, especially underserved, sustainability is just a way of life. I mean, you have to be resourceful, you have to be conservative, you cannot spend outside your means, you have to save, you have to reuse, you have to pass down clothes, you know, things like that. That's just a way of life, which is logical. Everybody should be thinking that way, and if you're not, then you're only contributing to the destruction that we're headed for. And so, as a business, we're trying to look at a way to become a first of its kind triple bottom line business model. So we environmentally, Core Recycling is right now the leading material recovery facility in the metropolitan region. We recycle about 69% of anything that comes into our facility. The next closest facility is about 55%. Economically, we try to find new innovative models where we're sharing profits with our clients, our contractors in particular. I'll give an example of a project when I was going through my entrepreneurial journey of trying to get financing. You know, I was told no multiple times, about 3 times, by various banks. And then finally, after just a lot of work, and I stuck with it, kept grinding, I finally found a way to formulate a business plan, and that was primarily based on all of the strategies, plans, goals, aspirations that this region was essentially crafting in its own future goals. And I leveraged that and allow that to be kind of the framework of my business plan outside of the metrics, because I knew the metrics would work because I understood how the recycling business did. And so I went to PDC. They supported my business plan. They provided a loan, and then there was some gap financing done by Business Oregon. We closed the loan in the fall of 2011. We spent all 2012 constructing. 2012 was probably the hardest year I've ever gone through as an adult. We couldn't pay ourselves multiple times. We had to make sure our employees could still get their checks. It was just a very difficult time because we were still small, but we had this new debt that we had to start paying on while building a building. So it took us an entire year. And finally, April 1st, 2013, we were authorized by Metro, who's the governing agency of the waste industry. They authorized us to tip waste on our floor. And at that same time, I was actually in negotiations with Hoffman Construction for the Intel project, Mod 2, the D1X project. And we immediately, when we executed that contract, outgrew our facility. So it was a perfect situation for us. Couldn't have been any more better timing than I ever could have thought about. We executed that contract, 30% increase in volume. We were already material was just coming in left and right. We managed through it. And the other valuable part about that, what I was talking about earlier in terms of economic value that we try to provide for our clients, is that on our contract value, we were able to rebate Hoffman Construction 18% just on material rebates by sharing profits. And for me, it wasn't really about the money. It was about trying to set the precedent of a way in which a new innovative model was coming into the industry, and how I was looking to be transparent and open with my clients about these are the things you're missing out on. I know I'm a small guy. My main competitors are the 2nd largest in North America and the 5th largest in this country. I can't compete with them blow for blow. But what I can do is I can create a new innovative approach to it and provide you a service that they cannot provide. And that was what I use as a template in order to try to open a lot of opportunities for me out there at Intel. I did get a lot of opportunities, but unfortunately, just based on the regulations and franchising laws, a lot of them were hindered from me because of politics. So aside from that, it became an example, and a lot of people became aware of what we were doing, and so we're getting a lot more calls and a lot more interest about providing services here in the metropolitan area. So I believe there's a lot of upside in that regard. And then socially, you know, we try to make sure we maintain a very diverse workforce. We're at about 82% diverse work employment, Hispanic, Native American, African American, and then Caucasian as well. But the main key to that is I never want to be a person who's not accessible to my employees. And I understand there's HR regs and ways in which you have to approach and talk to people, but I always want to just try to make things honest and real. Because you get straight to the point, and I feel like you're always going to have better results if you're just real. I always allow myself to be accessible. I don't allow my employees that are the ones that are working, picking waste at very excruciating circumstances. I mean, it gets hot, it gets dusty, it gets dirty, and I never want them to see me walking in wearing a suit and stuff like that. I always try to make sure I change my clothes before I come into the facility because I don't want them to feel like I'm some person who's unreachable or unattainable or something that is just an illusion, because I don't want to create an illusion because that's not me. And so with that, I try to create, a positive environment. I try to maintain positive dialogue with my employees. I try to provide different innovative ways where I can provide scholarship funds for them to get into school, for them to go to school, even English second language, if that's an obstacle. It's really about investing in the people, because at the end of the day, if you don't invest in the people, productivity goes down. If you invest in your people, if you make sure that people are happy, that people don't go to work but just want to come to where it is an environment they love to be in, then productivity, efficiencies are going to go up just automatically. It's just going to be a direct effect from it. And that's what I've learned from it. We don't need as many people because we have people that work harder because they love being there and they're treated right. And so that's what we try to value very heavily, and it's just something that my father's always had instilled into me. Take care of people, man. Don't treat people like shit, because it'll come back and bite you in the butt at some point, and plus there's no point in doing it. It's not logical to treat somebody bad. You don't want people treating you that way either. So for me, the big Wilson out of this is probably, I want to leverage myself and use myself as an example of how we can create a true sustainable model just through a small business, private sector endeavor. I know it's a very difficult aspiration, but I feel like if we can create it within City of Roses Disposal Recycling or Core Recycling, then it can be replicated, it can be modeled anywhere. And it's not necessarily just about profits or employment or saving the environment. It's more about just ensuring that we're doing what's necessary and we're making the necessary sacrifices to assure that the generation that is not even alive right now has an opportunity that is going to enable them to survive for centuries among centuries. And that is probably all I have to say for today, because I could probably go on and on, but I know I'm limited. But thank you for allowing me to be there.